fair, whose land you are zooming in from. I am zooming in from Bobancha, the land of many tons, otherwise known as New Orleans, which is the unceded land of the Chitimacha, Humas, and Chapatulas tribes. I just want to take a moment. Actually, and we're a small group, so please actually feel free to come off your mic and just share if you don't mind.
So I'm coming in from Richmond. I don't have as much details as you do, Kyle, but I'm a Ohlone here.
And if you don't know whose land you're zooming in from, I'm going to share a link in the chat where you can look that information up.
Hi, I'm Bree. I am coming in from Oakland, California, from the Loom.
Okay, and I'm Alexander. Originally started working with a nonprofit based in San Francisco, but I'm here in Los Angeles now. So,
all right, and okay, and I think that we're about to go into introductions, and I'll let Treka start our introductions.
Hello, everybody. My name is Treka. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Name it this one person. And I am the affiliate service coordinator for Indie Arts and new to the team. So I just want to do a small introduction. So if you're part of the organization or affiliate, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if you just wanted to check in, have any questions, concerns, or things of that nature. So I'm going to give this back to Kyle. I don't want to take up too much of his time because we had a late start. So thank you again, Kyle, and thank you for everybody for joining us.
And I'm seeing some more people joining us, so this is wonderful. Now we have, I think, about 7 folks here, so that's great. Again, Jordan, it seems like you're still having issues with your audio. I don't know if you want to try to come back in or yeah, but anyways, this is going to be a pretty interactive training, and so if you all can be able to contribute audio-wise, that'd be wonderful. And so I'm Kyle DeVries, they, them, or he, him pronouns. I do a lot of fundraising and also communications consulting work with different nonprofits, especially helping smaller nonprofits and culturally specific nonprofits really get their programs up and going. And it's a joy to be doing this work with Zoom, on Zoom with Independent Arts and Media. This is, I think, the second time doing this training series. And a lot of this is about storytelling, right? And so this is looking at how storytelling can be used as a tool for your communications to benefit your fundraising efforts. So a lot of nonprofit and communications and fundraising, they really go hand in hand. And this is going to be a little bit of focus. And today's workshop is focused on individual donors and individual fundraising. And how do we, hone our message and hone our communications and have the right tools to be able to build out that kind of level of support. So before we dive into that, I would love if we could do some introductions. And so I'll put this in the chat. I would love if everybody could go around. And again, since it's a small group, let's just stay, do this by audio rather than just by text. So if you can share your name, pronouns, your organization or project that you're working on. And when you think about one-on-one fundraising, what are some of the emotions that surface? And is there anybody who would like to start? Or I can choose.
I can start. I'm
okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so my name is Alexander Batson. I go by he, him. My organization is Those Guys SF, or the Films with Friends, that show films in North Beach every third Wednesday from June to November. So I came on to see what was going on and how to keep involved and stay involved. When I think about one-on-one fundraising on the emotional surface, it's definitely I think face-to-face is definitely the be all end all of be like, having someone trust that, the money is going to the right place and that they have confidence in like what the organization is. So being face to face and in person with like people who are raising money from is definitely important and valuable to like for me and for anywhere else that would give money. So yeah.
Right, so I'm hearing about that personal connection, right?
Yeah.
Alexander, do you want to choose the person to go next?
Yeah, I hate to put anyone on the spot, but yeah, I'll say I got Maria. I remember Maria was the other one up there. So
Thanks, Alexander. My name is Maria Tuttle, and my pronouns are she, her. And my organization is the Children's Art Studio Richmond, Taller de Arte para Niños Richmond. And when I think about one-on-one fundraising, the emotion that surfaces is exhaustion. I just finished a fundraiser on Thursday, July 25th, and it was more of we did a big problem of practice. We did a closing reception for my Children's Art Studio Richmond's Modern Children's Art Exhibition at the Richmond Museum of History and Culture. And we also tried to have it as a fundraiser. So in order to do that, we got donors. So we got local businesses, bars, and restaurants to donate food and liquor and their time. And I donated my time along with another instructor, and we did the curriculum basically for our guests. And we had to put everything on Eventbrite. There was a big marketing push. So it's really exhausting to do it. And so, I think a problem with practice and my curiosity is like, is it supposed to be so exhausting? So I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure what success is. Is success $1 million? Is success $1,000? I don't know. So those are another kind of questions around this. Anyway, so I'll pass it over to Bree.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, great. My name is Bree Zach. My pronouns are she, her. I am the program director for the Loom Foundation, which is part of the Loom Oakland. It's an NPO that we've just been starting up, and we are about to embark on our first fundraising expedition. So in terms of one-on-one or what emotion is I'm feeling with all of this is it's just kind of daunting, and yeah, just because there's so many different ways that fundraising you can go about doing it, and you want to do all of them, but like Maria said, it's very exhausting, and figuring out which way is the best way is for us is something that pretty daunting. Should I pick, I guess, Andrea?
Hi, am I unmuted? No, I'm not. Hi, everybody. I go by Annie, and I go by she, her, they, them, and I have an opera, a modern contemporary opera called Eve, and it is it's based on a real story, and it's based on a memoir, and it's a theatrical show that I've created with my son. And we put it on at the Palace of Fine Arts almost 3 years ago, and we're doing it again at ODC this December. It deals with domestic violence is the theme of, and healing and being a survivor and forgiveness and thriving and moving on and empowerment. So the fundraising, the emotion around asking a person for money, I just kind of wrote down some emotions, and some of them aren't even emotions. They're just like things that I think about or that come up for me. But basically, the biggest thing is a fear of rejection. And what I realized, like just in the last couple of days, because I'm getting ready for some big asks, And I realized that as an artist, like my thing is the art. I'm a composer. And if somebody says no to me or doesn't respond to a GoFundMe, I go into this whole place of like, oh, they don't want to support this, instead of like, maybe they're out of town, you know? So that's the biggest emotion. And so fear that it's gonna mess with my artistic confidence, which is like the biggest thing for me as an artist. Doubt, concern, resistance, all those things. And then also what comes up for me is this other thing, which is trust, hope, and faith, that this is happening and this is going to happen. And so that's gonna help my flow of keeping the flow going in this direction. Thanks. Nice to see you here. I'm glad it's a small group.
And Annie, would you mind picking the next person to share?
Oh, that's right. Okay. Hi, Lanita. Welcome. It's your turn if you want.
Okay, great. Can you just restate, because I had to switch computers, so I think I might have missed just that kind of overall framing of this conversation. Is it just about how we feel about asking for money, or what?
Yeah, so this is our introduction. So if you could share your name, pronouns, the organization or project that you're working with.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, again, it's like what emotions surface, what bubbles up when you think about one-on-one fundraising?
Yeah. My name is Lanita Pace. I go by she, her. I'm with El Timpano, which is a project with Independent Arts and Media. We are a civic media organization, 5 years old, and we focus on informing, engaging, and elevating issues and voices of the Bay Area's Latino immigrant communities. And it's a very dynamic organization, really excited to be working with them. My background is as a journalist, so I'm relatively new to fundraising. I'm not really that new, but I feel like I don't have the full set of kind of thinking about how to engage with individual donors in particular around asking for money. And as a journalist, and I think I kind of rely on my journalistic experience in terms of being able to identify and, at least do the initial contact with potential funders. But there's part of me, there's part of that journalist in me who, still, because I came up in the days where, there was this big, huge divide between the business side and the editorial side. So a little bit of that still exists within me. And for me, it's, yeah, I finally have overcome the kind of fear and kind of ethos that was just ingrained in me as a child of parents who grew up in the South. And having a certain level of humility as well as independence and not asking for things. So just kind of like overcoming that, understanding that, these funders actually have money and, asking is something that they expect. And it is part of, their mission to give money. But my kind of issue is just really not really understanding how donors think and what kinds of conversations to have with them. So good with the initial kind of like outreach, but when it comes to just talking with them, I feel unequipped, like, how to structure these conversations. So that's my shtick. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, please feel free to choose the next person.
Okay, how about Jordan?
Hi, thanks, Anita. Thanks, Kyle. Hi, everybody. Sorry I was on screen darkness. I'm just running around taking care of a million things this afternoon. Nice to see you all. I run an organization called Cushion Works in the Mission District. That's an exhibition space and a publications platform. And I've been doing it since 2017, but it started as a very part-time. nights and weekends sort of thing. And I was working at nonprofits as a curator forever. And so I've written a million grants and talked to a million people about soliciting money. But it's always been on behalf of a much larger organization. And I've never sort of tried to strike out on my own. And I'm surprised at how different it feels. And the emotions that have come forth just in the last 2 weeks since I started asking for money for the first time. One is feeling like it's almost like a kind of imposter syndrome. It's like there's so many places where people can support, so many places where money can go, so many crises in the world every second of the day. How can I possibly think that my organization needs your money more than someone else's? That's something. And also this idea that I love what I do so much that I feel as if soliciting private dollars to do it almost feels like getting away with something. And I realize that may be a concern more for a therapist than for you, Kyle. But it has surprised me in the last couple of weeks. So glad to be here and learn more.
Thank you. And I think Christina, are you able to come on audio and introduce yourself? Does not. Christina, if you can introduce yourself by, okay, there you are. Hi.
Hey. Yeah. Hi, I'm Christina. I also go by Kitty. Um, She, they, her, it, meow, depending on my mood or your mood. I am the founder, curator, artistic director, janitor of Little Boxes Theater since 2013 with my partner. The whole thing is a giant fundraiser, constantly not that successful, but we're still here somehow because because we work hard, I guess, and some people think we're worth it. Been writing grants more recently and a little bit more successful with grants recently, thankfully. Very necessary coming through the pandemic. Yeah, fundraising is very daunting, and like I said, it's the whole thing is a fundraiser. I've been donating my time and making events and helping artist productions happen. Making things work, but to a certain degree, and funds do help with making things work. It is the fear of rejection. It comes up for me to reference earlier speaking points. But at the same time, there are foundations and donors and individuals that do want and need to donate their money. And why not be for a good cause? To support other artists creating and saving lives with their creations. Little Boxes Theater is a performing arts and production venue for all the indie artists with no funding. So yeah, it's pretty important. That's about it. I think I'm not much of a public speaker, so that's.
Oh, that was perfect. Thank you. And Treka, do you want to introduce yourself again really quickly, just as like, kind of a new person who's integral to IAM? I know that you did it early on and you put something in the chat, but if you want to say something again now that everybody's here.
Yes, thank you. My name is Treka and I am the affiliate service coordinator for independent art media. New to the organization, so I will be reaching out to a lot of affiliates. Any service, any questions, concerns, please reach out to me. I put my information in the chat. You can email me at treka@artsandmedia.net. Please feel free to contact me, and I will be following with everybody individually in the next 2 to 3 weeks as I'm getting acclimated to my role here. So thank you, and thank you for joining. This is my first workshop joining in. So I'm really excited, and thank you, Kyle, for your patience and this opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Treka, for all your support. All right, so I'm going to share my screen as we start digging into things. Can everybody see that okay? Just like the little introduction.
Yeah.
Is that working now? Okay, great. All right, so one-on-one fundraising can be scary, right? That was something that got surfaced a lot in that introduction. A lot of us, including myself with all of my years of experience, have feelings of fear or anxiety when it comes to asking for money or support, right? And I think a lot of this got surfaced during our introductions, like where do these emotions come from? There's always that huge fear of no, right? We all have a fear of rejection, whether it be about donations, whether it be about asking somebody out on a date, whether it be about just even like hanging out with friends sometimes, right? That you know, that fear of any kind of rejection, it's built into us as social creatures, and it just hardwired in. And because of that fear of no, asking for money is really an act of vulnerability. You're putting yourself out there, and you're putting your passion out there, right? This is something that you invest a lot of time and energy and your own resources into. I would be willing to bet that nobody on this call is getting paid a sustainable living wage, maybe not even getting paid anything at all for the work that y'all are doing. And so, you know, you're putting so much into it that really having that any kind of rejection, it really is like a moment of vulnerability. You're putting yourself out there, you're putting your heart out there for people to stomp on if they want. But again, you know, we're going to talk about like reframing some of that. And so individual fundraising, it also is often, especially when you're early on, it's about asking your friends and family for money. And that can be really uncomfortable for a lot of us. That, you know, unfortunately, you know, we have to ask some of us have to ask our friends and family for a lot of things. Maybe some of us are more comfortable with that. But, you know, it's kind of weird asking for money for direct hard cash from our friends and family. I know it is, at least for me. I've never had a family that I can just go to and be like, hey, can I have some money for that, y'all? Like, no, like we are solidly like middle-class family. That is not a thing. And so, you know, but early on, like when you're building out your initial tier of supporters, your friends and family are who you're going to go to, because they're going to also see your passion, see your love for what you're doing, and see the importance of it. And then also we are taught that fundraising is a one-sided exchange. We're really taught that it's only, I'm asking you for money and you don't get anything in return, right? Like you're just giving money to me and then I get to go do whatever I want with it. And like, that is so not the case when it comes to fundraising. And we're going to get into that in a second, but like, again, it's that idea that it's really a one-sided exchange. Not only is it transactional, but like really the people who are donating aren't getting anything out of it. That's one of the biggest barriers that people have around asking for money for projects. But one-on-one fundraising can be exciting. And, you know, what does it look like if we flip the typical emotions around asking for money on their head, right? It can be exciting because you're getting to personally connect supporters to your project or cause. This is a really intimate moment. You can get them as excited as you are about what you're working on. You're also, by doing that, helping others have an authentic impact on the world. You know, not everybody has the time or energy to be able to commit to making a change in the world. However, they do have money. And so this is, again, where it's coming back to, this is not a one-sided exchange. This is a two-way transaction. You are giving this person access to having a difference, to making a difference, making change in the world, through your organization, through your project, right? And when you're talking to them, we'll talk more about authentic impact and how to frame that. But you know, it's really about connecting them with the work that you're doing so that they feel like they're a part of it. And they feel like it's actually something that they're really again, authentic way contributing towards. Also, each donation is really a relationship that can be grown over time. And we'll keep coming back to this over and over again, but I cannot overemphasize enough how much fundraising is really about growing relationships. You cannot look at it as like, I'm just trying to get you for this one donation and that's it, right? This is about bringing somebody in over time to support your organization and your project more and more and more. And you really want to focus on, like, again, that relationship building aspect. Don't let it be about just being a donation. Really try to hone in on those human interactions. Try not to just always be about business. But yeah, and that's, I don't know, for me, relationships are why I do this work. I love people. I love connecting people into the good work that needs to be done in the world. And so I view each of those potential like relationship developments like is it just a beautiful thing that can be flower over time. And then, you know, what's more exciting than actually shooting past your personal fundraising goals? I know that like, yes, it's scary, but you know, especially if you set your goals realistically, when you surpass those goals, because you will, because we always set our goals too low when we try to do the realistic thing, it feels amazing. And it shows that you have the grassroots support for your project that's going to take it to the next level. And so at any point, if anybody has questions or anything, comments, feel free to hop in. Again, we're a small group. So this doesn't have to be super formal. But in terms of that, I also want us to start sharing with each other. So I would like for us to take about 3 minutes. We're going to pair up. One group will be a trio. And I want you all to share one experience of a one-on-one fundraising ask where it either worked or did not work. And so this can be either somebody asking, right, and doing the fundraising pitch, or it can be somebody else asking you at a time that you're like, oh, wow, that was really powerful. I love how they did that, right? Any questions? So we're going to have about 1.5 minutes for a 2-minute warning when it's time to start thinking about heading back so that the last people can have a chance to share. We're just waiting for the other groups to come back. Y'all came back a little early, which is great. So as soon as everybody else joins us back, then we can start per group around like, what did you hear? Were there any trends, any insights that you had around what makes a one-on-one fundraising ask successful or not? Who's willing to volunteer to share first?
Can I share for Lanita and I?
Yeah.
So here is a theme, and Lanita, if I misspeak, please jump in. We didn't ask for enough. We didn't realize. So like, and then also Lanita sort of mentioned the motto, all you have to do is ask. And so I think we both found that sort of interesting and surprising.
Yeah, we oftentimes definitely do not ask for enough. And I always say, you know, try to think about how much you want to ask that person and then go to the next level above that even. All right, another group. Alexander or Annie, would either of you like to share?
Oh yeah, I don't know if Andy wants to go. I definitely learned from Andy that, you know, when you go to a donor and you get funded from them, the ask again is kind of like that, you know, to build up that like courage to go back and ask again. That, you know, but that you won't, if you don't know, you know, if you don't ask, you never know. Also like sharing my experience with like going to small businesses and being able to share, letting them know that you have value to give back to their businesses is the valuable aspect to you know, anyone who's going to fund any project. So the sharing that value back and saying this is where your $20 will go is always important for anyone that you go to. So
Yeah, absolutely. Sharing about that impact, right? How's that donation going to make an actual visceral change? Great. And Bree, Christina, Jordan, would one of you be willing to share back with us?
I guess I shared that it's important to connect personally on a personal human level with whomever you're asking money for, regardless of the quantity. It's very beneficial to, because it can seem so daunting, and because there could potentially be a lot of money involved, to have that barrier that they're not like a person. They're just like this sum of money that you need. And just getting to know them personally, I think is always really an important step first, prior to, if you have the opportunity, and just to connect with them on a human level before making that ask, if you have the opportunity.
Yes. And I want to say, if you don't know that person, then take a moment at the beginning of your meeting and get to know them. Ask them,
exactly.
why are they passionate about this work? Why were they interested in meeting with you in the first place? What is their personal connection to it? That by itself can be a really powerful action. Also, and I want to lift up Kurti, and Kurti, I'm sorry, let me know if I'm mispronouncing your name, please. It is here with us. Kind of had some technical difficulties, but it is available on the audio, joining us as well today. Us through wrong format for that. Move us through the rest, the next segment of content, and then we will have another activity to start digging into how we start creating some of these donor pitches. So, like we were talking about earlier, the secret sauce of individual fundraising is relationship, right? It's all about that connection. It's a human connection. And the stronger that relationship is to your project, to the organization, but also to you as a leader of that project and organization, it's going to be a better donor relationship. And I kind of think about that relationship, like a lot of this, like I go to farming metaphors a lot because I do a lot of gardening and farming. And kind of think about it like three, like you have like nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus for your like farming. And those are like the three key ingredients you need for your plants to survive. And so for me, those key ingredients for funders, for fundraising, and specifically like donor relationships, is impact, integrity, and engagement. And then if you give these time and time again, your donors are going to keep growing and giving more year over year. And so impact is really about a bit of your value statement and why, what are you doing in the world? What is your work doing that's creating a difference? How is their money changing people's lives in the world around them, right? Integrity is all about growing that trust in the organization and its leadership, including yourself as the fundraiser and leader. And a lot of that goes into transparency and just reliability, and engagement, right? Engagement is really about connecting that donor directly to the work, making them feel a sense of belonging, making them feel like their opinions matter. And again, so that's really important, that folks not just feel like it's just lip service, right? They want to know that you're hearing them when they share about where they want the work to go in the long run. Because again, you're asking them to make significant contributions. Like, they want something significant back from you in that regard. So really quick, science of stories. I'm a big proponent of storytelling. I think it's so important in fundraising and communications. Storytelling is the oldest form of passing knowledge. It's almost certainly one of the huge evolutionary stepstones that got us to where we are as a human society. Our brains are literally hardwired for stories. They've done research on this. Our brains light up in very specific ways and more fully when stories are being told versus just hard facts, hard data. The stories hold a place of importance throughout all cultures and times. You can look anthropologically back, and basically there's no culture where stories haven't been essential for that culture. And studies have shown that people grasp and retain information more easily when it's in stories form. And so that brain lighting up, that is actually, them processing the information in a different way than they would otherwise. And so they're more likely to remember things. They're more likely to have an emotional connection, right? And that's because, again, stories have that ability to create empathy and human connection in a way that pretty much nothing else does. So I really think that when you're approaching individual fundraising, when you're approaching any kind of fundraising, any kind of communications, like really thinking about the storytelling angle, right? Like it's going to help you connect everybody else to the importance of what you're doing. And so thinking about that in the foundations of any story, like you have your characters, you have a conflict, and you have a setting, right? And so your characters are going to be, who is change being made for, who's being changed, who's doing the changing. And it also, depending on the work that you're doing, might involve some antagonists as well as protagonists, right? There might be people who are keeping you from doing the work or are setting up a bad situation that you're trying to fix. There's a lot of great information. I highly recommend going out and like reading out about like some of the archetypes of stories. We don't really have time to get into that today. There's some very basic ones around like quest and overcoming obstacles and all of that. But so when you're looking at, again, your story elements, characters, who is that being, who are the protagonists, antagonists, conflict, like what are you trying to overcome? What are you trying to accomplish? And setting, I think about that in terms of like your geography, the specific demographics of the people and the specific communities that you're trying to influence, right? What is the context of that conflict and the characters? And there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this. And I think especially within artistic work, it kind of gets fun to think about. And it might get it might be a little tricky to like think about like, okay, as somebody who's working in the arts, like what are those characters, conflict and setting? But I think that if you think about your work through those lenses, it's going to give you some really interesting answers that you can use that will inform your storytelling overall. Right. And so your project team, your collaborators, you're the protagonists. And you want to set yourselves up that way. You're recruiting your donor to decide that's doing right, that's going to win. And so that's always kind of like the overall arc of the story. This isn't going to be a story that has a lot of high and low points, right? Like it's a hopeful story. There's a lot of like power in stories, but I will say there's not so much power in, especially around fundraising or communications for a project, of not leaning into hope. Like there's just not a reason. Like certainly reality is important, and like being able to present the reality of people's struggles in an authentic and realistic way. But overall, like the end goal is to overcome those struggles, to make a positive change, to impact people's lives in a positive way. And then as you're doing the storytelling, one thing to just try to keep it grounded. It can be really easy to try to spin out into like, we're saving the world, we're doing all the things, we're changing the culture, yes, everything's going to be different after this, you don't even know. And that's great. Like you can definitely mention your long-term vision, but ground it back into the now and the real people that you're impacting whenever you can. And remember that the show don't tell kind of thing of storytelling is also important within nonprofit communications. So, it makes a lot more difference to have a testimonial from a client or from somebody's life that you've impacted than for you to talk about it in terms of abstraction, right? People like concrete details. They like to have these stories grounded in reality. And so there's a couple of tools that I recommend for individual fundraising, for one-on-one fundraising. And I do want to say, so these are different, like this is not, we're not really talking about individual fundraising today. And so like Maria, like I know you were talking about how exhausting that event fundraising was. And I want to say that I think event fundraising can be some of the most exhausting work you will do as in terms of your fundraising. Event fundraising has other benefits where it's building kind of an overall sense of community. It's bringing people into your mission and vision. But it can be really exhausting, especially for the amount of money that you make off of it. And hopefully you'll find that like As you get the hang of one-on-one fundraising, it's a little bit less, sapping of your energy and resources. Maybe not the first couple times you do it, but especially as you get more comfortable with it, as you get some yeses, those yeses are going to feed you and give you a lot of energy. So there's 3 tools for one-on-one fundraising that I really recommend developing. The first most essential is your pitch, your too long didn't read pitch, elevator pitch, however you want to call it. It's the most condensed version of what you're doing and why it's important. Why is it unique? Why is it needed? And you want to have this short and really sweet, like it should be maybe a couple of sentences, 2 to 3 sentences, shouldn't be really run on. You just want to like kind of work to get it as condensed as possible. And I really recommend, we're going to actually take some time to practice this, but it's something you're going to want to write out. You're going to want to edit. You're going to want to keep revisiting it. You're going to want to keep honing it. And over time, it'll grow and strengthen. But just being able to have it in your head, be able to remember it and speak it with ease is so important. And it's language that is going to be in other parts of your communications and fundraising strategy. So it's going to be like a set of phrases that you repeat in your grant writing, that you repeat on your website, that you repeat in your social media, because that TLDR pitch is really honing in as much as possible on your impact and what you're doing that's unique. And then kind of the next piece of material that I really recommend is a one-pager. And I think that this is a double-sided one-pager because it can be so hard to fit all of that information onto a single page, one-sided. So, when I say one-pager, I think, again, it's just like a simple handout. And you might decide that you don't need a full one page. Maybe you just need like a little card or something, but most people I work with even have a hard time fitting it down to a double-sided one page. And this is a visual and informational document that you can leave with potential supporters. It's going to be their kind of reference back to everything that you shared during your meeting. It's going to have visuals that engage people, and it's going to have a direct call to action and like URLs for next steps around, or emails for next steps around whatever the ask that you're doing is. And that first paragraph really should focus as much as possible on impact and hook the reader. The idea is that like, this is a document that you're developing for one-on-one fundraising, but you can also use for corporate sponsorships or event sponsorships or getting in-kind donations, right? That this is going to be something that talks about everything from that pitch of, why is this important work? Why does it need to be happening now? What's unique about it? But then expanding on that, talking more about the impacts you're already having in the community, talking a little bit about your visions, maybe talking about the specific programs or artistic work that you're engaged with. It's just going to provide a lot more context. The wonderful thing about that one pager is that is also essentially your script, your kind of guide for when you're having these meetings. So you should be doing that in such a way, like it should be easy enough for you to follow along and just basically be like, okay, right. Like I've got this first paragraph. That's basically my pitch. It talks about the importance of this all. Then it can flow into either, programs or more impacts, like however it makes sense for the work that you're doing. But the idea is that as you design it, it's going to have the flow of the conversation that you want to have with that donor. And so it is important to think about, what is the most important information first for yourself? So, always starting with that kind of opening pitch and hook and like, why is this the most important work ever? But then, is the next most important thing that you've done these amazing programs in the last year? You want to highlight that. Or is it that you have these 3 programs that you're coming up and you want to highlight that? Like you're going to want to be strategic around sharing the information that feels the most important first so that people don't get overwhelmed with the amount of information that's being presented. And so, as you give them more and more information, they are able to absorb less of it. And that's why you always kind of want to start with that most important stuff first. And also, doing a digital, like a website, it acts as your digital business card. It can be the most basic thing possible. As long as it has, contact information, you need to have a way for people to get back in touch with you. People will not trust your organization if there is not at least a form to get back in touch or an email. That is like a really important part of transparency. And I'll tell you, like, I personally will not donate to anything that doesn't at least have that kind of like accountability back where I can get back in touch with that leadership of that organization. And it should have a donation page. Ideally, like this will become a part of your main digital communication strategy. The website is just so important, whether it be for one-on-one fundraising, for grants too, like grant funders, they want to see that you have a website. And so there are a lot of ways to get a cheap website done these days. There's some, AI website builders out there. There's things like Wix that are really cheap. And so, I just highly recommend one of your early investments in communications. A website is just so very useful. All right, and so honing your pitch. Let's dive into that a little bit more. Tips for your pitch, right? Your pitch should be 1 to 3 sentences, no run-on sentences, nothing that is really hard for people to understand when they're listening to it coming out of your mouth. You want to stay away from listing out all of the what's of your projects. Focus on what the impacts are, not what the programs that you're doing. Not, oh, we're doing these workshops and we have this art exhibit and we do these things. How are those workshops impacting people's lives? How is it changing their lives? How's it changing the culture? How's it changing whatever systems you're operating within, right? Always, always, always go back to those impacts as much as you can and try to keep those impacts really grounded, right? It's okay for you to talk a little bit about your impact in the culture at large, but really you want to be talking about your impact on individual people. And also, these pitches need to center why is the project needed, right? What makes it unique? Why is it needed now? How will make it a bigger splash than other similar projects? This is often called a position statement or a value statement for different businesses or organizations. And so it's a part of that core language that you need to figure out that's going to help other people understand, why should I be giving to your project over all these other things that are happening in the world? And that is especially important as you are going beyond just asking family and friends, right? As you take that step from asking people who are directly connected to you to people who are maybe just interested in the mission and vision of your project, having that positioning statement around what's unique, why is it needed now, is just so essential. But also don't stress too much about getting exactly the perfect language, and don't let that hold you back. Perfection can be the enemy of completion, and it's okay for your pitch to evolve as your project does, as your work with the project does. And I really recommend, once you've got that first pitch, we're actually about to do a little pitch practice now. But even as you take the next evolution, go meet with some of your friends or your strongest supporters and collaborators and be like, hey, this is what I've worked up for the pitch. Can you tell me how it's sounding? Can you give me any feedback? Really rely on that core network of supporters. And by you sharing the pitch and talking about the communication strategy, you're going to bring that core supporters even closer into your project. So we're going to do a little pitch practice. So first, I want us to do a moment of individual journaling. We're going to keep this really quick just for the sake of time, maybe 3-4 minutes. So it's going to be an act of just try to get it out of your head as quickly as you can. And you're just going to do a real quick pitch around your project or your organization. So again, 2-3 sentences at most. Why is it important? Why is it unique? Why is it needed now? Then we're going to break into pairs and trios and take turns practicing the pitch and then giving feedback about how the pitch went. And then we're going to keep, the idea is that we'll rotate every about a minute. It'll be about every 2-3 minutes. We'll rotate and the next person will be able to give their pitch and get feedback. So I'm going to stop sharing. Let me put those instructions in the chat for us. And then we'll have about 3-4 minutes of quiet time and people can work on their pitches. Does everybody have something to write with? Or type with? Okay, great. All right. I find that people oftentimes like silence when writing. Is that true for folks here? Okay, okay, great. So yeah, if we can just have about 4 minutes of silent time, and then we will break into groups and do some sharing. All right, just about 1 more minute, and then go ahead and split a few folks out. All right, just for sake of time, I'm gonna ask that we run with whatever you've created. It may not be perfect, but it's good enough for this. And you're gonna keep refining and honing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and break folks up into the small rooms. And again, if you can just do a real quick pitch and then take a minute for people to share how that felt with them, how it impacted them, and then rotate. And I'll give a reminder every 2 minutes to rotate. All right, great. Opening up those rooms. All right, welcome back, y'all. All right, again, just to keep us moving. I have like a last little bit of content. Oh, I have a last little bit of content that I'm hoping to get through. So if we could keep these sharebacks really quickly, I know, sorry to have to ask that. But yeah, if one person per group could share, how did that feel? Giving your own pitch, how did it feel? Like what was working from other people's pitches?
I'm happy to share for our group that it seemed like one common thing that came up was that we got really juicy and we didn't really put in there what we were exactly raising money for, or like the sort of what we are, more than describing the juice of it. So
Mm-hmm. So needing to balance that like impacts juice along with the like actual like, hey, this is
both. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
So,
somebody
I think like I could just say, and then Alexander, please chime in real quick. Like the ask, it's like both of us were like, when do you ask? Do you do it later? Do you make an appointment? So both of us were really good at what we do, who we serve, why it's important. But then okay, now are you gonna ask for money right now or ask for an appointment to talk for money later? And do you do this in person? How do you do this online? So on and so forth.
Yeah. I think it goes it's like case by case, I guess, depending on I always said like it depends on like who I'm dealing with, like whether or not I'm gonna like ask there and they know they're ready or not. But definitely like it's always that main question.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're about to go into a little bit more about all of that. And there was a third group.
Yeah. So Bree, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I think we both had pretty great pitches and they were both rather direct, which I don't know. I mean, I certainly appreciate, especially if, as just personally, but that may, I'm thinking about it now and what other people have said, like maybe that's not always the best approach. I mean, I don't know. It depends on, I mean, I'd love to hear some more feed, like just information about like how like it's, you don't want to be too rude by just asking, but then at the same time I'm like that's kind of what we're doing. So I don't know. I thought both of our pitches were good, and we kind of explained our organizations, and then in the second bit, ask for funding. So it was then kept it pretty succinct. So yeah.
Yeah. I just want to add that one thing that Bree did point out to me is that the importance of talking about the need in that pitch. And that's something that, I talked about the reasons, but it didn't really hit hard on the need, why we need that money, the support, why the service is needed.
Yeah, and I want to be so the pitch is like a part of the overall ask, right? Your pitch is kind of getting at like what is that core that you're going to use to present about your organization anytime. And then that's the first part of the ask. And so let me share my screen and let me get us through a little bit about making the ask. Is that showing up right? Okay, great. Ways to make the ask. All right, so best way is always to try to make the ask in person. This has the highest success rate by far. You were talking about like not wanting to feel rude. The way you make sure that you're not feeling rude about it is that you say like, hey, I'd like to meet with you to talk about my project and ask you to support it financially. People are used to that, especially people who are higher income. They're very used to being asked for that kind of request. And it just, honestly, anytime you just want to be as forthright as possible. Hey, this is why I'm reaching out to you. And so if you can't do an in-person meeting, a phone call or a Zoom or the next best thing. Honestly, I prefer phone calls. This might be a generational thing. I guess I'm on the older side of the generations now. And like I find that like phone call feels more intimate than a Zoom meeting sometimes. But it just depends. Like maybe a video conference call is really what's going to feel better. And again, it can be really quick. Like, you can even text that person, be like, hey, do you have a moment to chat? Like I'm working on this project. I'd love to talk to you about it and ask for your support. it's always leading, like making sure that people know, like, hey, I'm going to be asking you for support. So it does not come as a surprise. So it does not feel rude in any way. Text messages can also work. I really recommend text messages more as part of a campaign, like a crowdfunding campaign, not as part of like I would never ask by text message for a donation over like $100 really. And that's just me. Like other people have different levels for that, but like for me, I'm not really working with huge donors a lot of the time. I'm working with moderate donors, and so anything over 100 is a significant contribution that I want to cultivate through a direct conversation. And so text messaging just doesn't really build personal relationships in the same way as in person or by phone or Zoom. And then social media messages can be your last resort. For some reason, you don't have a phone number. You know, that is another way to reach out to people. But I would even then again recommend trying to get the phone number and be like, hey, like I'd love to talk to you more about this, like by Facebook message. Can you give me your phone number so we can have a chat? You know, try to just use it as an entry point. Tips for making the ask. Sorry, I'm going to move through this quickly because of time. Again, like I said earlier, let the person know you want to ask them to make a donation. For in person, that could look like, I was wondering, do you have time to meet next week so I could share about my project and asking for support? Phone, I want to catch up, and I'd also love to share about the organization that I'm raising funds for. Do you have time for that? Bring your one pager and any other supporting materials so you can share them in person. They can also be emailed at the end of a phone call or shared by screen presentation in Zoom. I highly recommend if you have photo or video documentation, have that be a part of your presentation. Don't do anything longer than like 3 minutes of video, but like, you know, that whole saying of a picture is worth 1,000 words, absolutely true in fundraising. But make sure that it's pictures of your work. Don't do generic stock photography. Generic stock photography is fine for visuals for your website, for one pager, things that are kind of more generic, but like when you're doing these meetings and you do kind of supporting materials, you want it to be directly related to your project or organization. Also, after sharing about the project organization, make a direct ask with a specific money amount, right? So you do the pitch, you share your supporting materials, you answer any questions, and then you make a direct ask. I would even say you can make the direct ask before you answer questions. It depends on the flow of the conversation. But oftentimes I'll do my pitch, I'll show the materials and be like, and I would love for you to donate $500 or $5,000 or whatever number you've predetermined. So before you go into that meeting, always come up with the number that you've got. Think about what that person's wealth is. If you have any idea about what they've donated to other organizations, that's super helpful. If they're super wealthy, you might be able to look up some of that information, but typically you can't. So it's going to be a gut, you know, kind of check with yourself, and always ask the next level above. So if you think that they can afford 500, ask for 1,000. If you think they can afford 1,000, ask for 2,000. You know, just try to take it a next step, because like the worst thing that they're going to say is like, oh, I can't afford that now, but I can afford this, right? And asking for a specific amount is really proven to net you a bigger donation. Like folks were saying before, the one thing that's really important about that ask is if you can link it into direct impact. So, you know, I'm asking for $500. That is going to pay for the teachers for an entire, weekly workshop for Children's Art Studio. Or I'm asking for $1,000, and that's going to pay for a month of dance classes for that will allow 50 kids to be able to access dance and physical wellness through that. So try to think of that the specific amount, and then try to think it back to some kind of deliverable. It's not like an actual you're not saying like, oh, if you give me this money, then I'm hiring this new person. It's an example of the impact within your organization. And follow up after the ask. Always ask if they know anybody else they think would be interested in supporting the project or organization. You may not get a yes from that person, but and I would say, especially if you are getting a no, like almost always it'll be like, I can't afford that at this time. Then ask them if they know anybody else who'd be interested and passionate about supporting the project, and if they would help make a personal introduction to that person or to that business. Always thank them for their time, no matter what the outcome. Be super appreciative. If the person has pledged a donation, ask them for the best way for you to follow up on receiving that. And don't be afraid to ask for a specific timeline. Deadlines can be your friends here, but different people have different ways. Like they might have a personal foundation. They might need it to be a check to a certain thing. You know, again, especially because most of you all are fiscally sponsored projects, you're gonna want to know, like, almost certainly it's going to be like a check to IAM or a donation through that portal, and you just want to be really, you know, tight on following up on that. And about a day after the meeting, it can be up to a week after, follow up with thank you note, even if it was a no. Like a thank you note of any kind, doesn't have to be a card, it can just be a text, it can be, you know, another call, just like, hey, thank you so much for taking time to meet with me. Just wanted to say how much I appreciated that. Again, this is about relationship building. So they might give you a no now. You want to keep them engaged in the work as long as they express that they were still interested in it and still passionate about it, and then be able to come back to them for an ask of their time. And then I cannot emphasize this enough, but track everything. So many small organizations do not do this, and it is to their huge detriment later on. But you want to figure out some kind of system for tracking. Who are you asking? Who are your potential donors? What are the outcomes? I highly recommend doing a CRM or a constituent relationship management system. And there are a couple of free ones, GiveButter and Zephy, that allow you to track all that information and ask for donations for free. And I believe, and Treka, you might, I don't know if you have this information, but I believe that IAM does have access to a CRM that their FSPs can be a part of.
I believe so, but I can check to confirm. And I'm also be sending out some follow-up emails, so any additional information, I can add it to that too.
Right. Yeah, but again, I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, this is about relationships, and our brains can only hold so much information. So when you go back to figure out who are you reaching out to on your next fundraising campaign, your end of year cycle, whatever it is, having information about who is given consistently over time is just so incredibly useful. We were going to do another role-playing activity, but we ran out of time. So I just felt that we're at about 4 minutes past. So thank you all so much for your time.